Surgery is really a form of craftsmanship. You stream the surgeries you perform in Almaty on your YouTube channel and even provide commentary in English. Surgeons go full throttle for 2 weeks, then the number of surgeries plummets over the next 2. We could sometimes sort things out in just a day. All through social media. Yes, exactly, through social media. People would say, we're willing to charter a plane if you can come and perform the surgery. So a doctor never really stops being a doctor, does he? Compared to, say, a head of state, a regular doctor is much more likely to be disturbed. Their personal life often takes a backseat. Mynzhylky Berdikhozhayev is a surgeon with several thousand high-tech operations under his belt. He's also a passionate educator. He's active on social media, writes academic papers, live streams surgeries on YouTube, and somehow still finds the time to respond to patient questions around the clock. Mynzhylky Berdikhozhayev, thank you so much for finding the time to speak with us. And I really do mean finding the time. You flew in from Germany this morning, have just a few hours here in Astana, and then you're off to Almaty, where you've got a full schedule of surgeries tomorrow morning. Is that your usual pace of life? It often is, yes. What took you to Germany this time? Just briefly, if you don't mind. I was there for an international conference, my first one in Germany, actually. I first went there back in 2012 for a study trip. I reached out to Professor René Chapeau. He's originally French, but he works in Essen, and he told me to come. He even helped me find housing near the hospital. I spent 3 weeks with him and I learned a lot in that time. Since then, we've become very good friends. I've invited him to Kazakhstan a few times for conferences. There's a conference in Dubai, Pers Neuro, where we'll be live streaming a surgery directly from our operating room in Almaty. I'll also be presenting 2 talks there. I try to attend at least 1 conference a month, usually as a speaker. Sometimes I'm invited as part of the faculty team, that means helping to moderate the conference. Then, on June 2nd, we're planning to broadcast 2 live surgeries for the LINNC conference in Paris. That makes us even luckier to catch you while you're in Astana. I really hope we can make the most of the time you have and hear some fascinating insights. When we walked into your office just now, I noticed these anatomical models of the brain and skull on the shelf. What are they for? I mean, doctors already know what's inside the human head, right? They're useful in a couple of ways. First, they're great for training. Before surgery, it helps to reorient yourself, get a mental map of where you'll be working. You can't possibly remember every tiny detail all the time. Ideally, you'd look at the skull model every day and mentally rehearse the approach you're going to take. And second, they're really helpful when talking to patients. One of the most common questions is, how exactly is the surgery going to be done? And that's hard to explain with just words. So I'll bring out a skull or brain model and walk them through it. This is the motor cortex, which controls movement, or here's the area that controls speech, and then point out where the issue is and how we'll access it. It also helps explain the risks. When people see how close the affected area is to key brain centers, they get a much clearer picture of the very real possibility that those vital areas could be affected. Why do you think it's so important to clearly walk a patient through what you're about to do? Most of the time, conflicts that crop up later happen because something wasn't said clearly, or at all. People often think they're on the same page, but in reality they're not. That's why you have to carve out time to sit down and explain, in plain, straightforward language, what the illness is and what it means. Not just to the patient, but to their family too. Is that difficult for you? I mean, doctors tend to speak in very technical terms, using words most people outside the field wouldn't understand. It is hard to come down to the patient's level, so to speak, and explain in layman's terms what you and your team are about to do. It's actually one of the most important parts of the job. You need to build trust and figure out how to speak in a way the person in front of you will truly understand. Because sometimes when you say something, maybe they don't want to seem uninformed or unsure, and they say, "Yes, I get it." But later it turns out you were speaking two completely different languages. When do you usually realize that happened? I tend to ask follow-up questions to make sure we're on the same page. When I was just starting out, I'd see a condition, realize surgery was needed, and I'd just hand over a report saying, "You need an operation. Go to your clinic and get scheduled." But you have to remember, this is a human being sitting in front of you. Maybe they have family reasons for not wanting surgery. Maybe they've had a bad experience in the past and believe that trusting a doctor means they're doomed to death. So it's crucial to listen, to really hear what they're saying. Honestly, I believe psychology shouldn't be a much bigger part of medical training. It's something we need to pay serious attention to in medical universities. Mynzhylky Berdikhozhayev, what's your overall take on the development of neurosurgery in Kazakhstan, especially looking at how it's progressed over the years? Well, it's 2025 now, and I'd say Kazakhstan is keeping up. Of course, when you compare us to a place like Mayo Clinic, the difference is massive. Their clinic alone has a budget of about $10 billion a year. That's more than the healthcare budget of our entire country, which is around $6 billion. So naturally, the kind of investment they can make in one specific field is on a whole different scale. That said, we've made good strides in key areas: neurosurgery, cardiac surgery, oncology. But these fields require huge financial backing. And right now, our main funding model is mandatory health insurance, which is underfunded. We hear this every year. There's about $1 billion shortfall in the system, and that shortfall shows in the results. So yes, the level of neurosurgery here is strong, but as the year goes on and funding runs low, things slow down. Patients start lining up, and that delay leads to complications. People come in when their condition has already worsened, and it's much harder to treat them by then. And there's another piece to this. Surgery is really a form of craftsmanship. To keep your hands steady and your skills sharp, you need a constant flow of patients. I keep thinking about the viral video of you, fast asleep after a 12-hour operation. You've addressed it before, of course, but I wonder, didn't it actually make people feel the opposite? That surgeons are overworked, not under practice. That's a fair point, but let me explain. This year, funding for advanced brain vessel surgeries was cut significantly. We're talking about a 6 billion tenge reduction. So what happens now is that surgeons go full throttle for 2 weeks, then the number of surgeries plummets over the next 2. And not every clinic can afford an offer to pay procedures as an alternative.
В большинстве клиник падает. И не все клиники могут оказывать помощь по платным услугам.
But does a 2-week break really make a difference in a surgeon's skill? I mean, it doesn't sound that long.
Или это тоже влияет?
Это очень сильно влияет. Во-первых,
it actually makes a huge difference. First off, this kind of funding structure basically sidelines the most complex cases. No regional or city-level health official wants to deal with serious complications. They're a heavy hit to the budget. So hospitals start turning away the toughest patients. And where do those patients go? They have no choice but to head to major cities like Almaty or Astana. If someone has a tricky condition that might require more supplies than usual, local hospitals just tell them, you'll need to go to a specialized clinic. Even if the local doctor could do the surgery, the skill might be there, but the support isn't. Sure, the equipment's in place, but they don't have enough supplies. Right. The hospital simply can't afford them. The head doctor's working with a tight budget, and that budget has to keep the entire hospital running. My dad was retired, my mom stayed at home, so I knew law school wasn't exactly in the cards for me financially. Maybe if things had been different, I might have gone that route, and who knows, maybe I'd have done well there too. But I also felt like someone in the family had to go into medicine, even though people tried to steer me away. Your parents? One of our relatives had a son who started med school but dropped out after a couple of years. It just got too hard. Why didn't you give up? Not your studies at medical school, not your work as a doctor, even though it probably wasn't paid as well as it should have been. What kept you going? Why did you stay the course and go through all of that to become who you are today? Some people break under pressure. I've seen it. Classmates, friends, even doctors who just couldn't go on. But I find it fascinating when you come up against a challenge and figure out how to push through it.
Это же очень интересно, когда есть сложности, которые можно преодолеть.
I really want to ask you about your public work. You'd think a surgeon's schedule would be packed enough as it is, with all those operations, especially the way you work so intensively. And yet you still find time to write important posts on Facebook, give interviews to anyone who asked, and explain things to viewers in simple, relatable language. Why did you feel that was important? Well, Facebook has a limit of 5,000 followers, and I had all 5,000. Among them were top officials, even the Minister of Health. So whenever there were issues in healthcare, especially in my field, I would speak up. And surprisingly, that often helped get things resolved. For example, if there were problems with medical quotas, we could sometimes sort things out in just a day. All through social media. Yes, exactly, through social media. That's when I realized how effective it could be. I remember one case around 2013 or 2014, maybe a bit later. A patient in a city hospital in Almaty contacted me. I gave her a remote consultation, looked at her case, gave my opinion on the likely diagnosis, and sent over a written report. She reached out to you on social media too. She did. They sent me her CT scans by email. I reviewed everything. But the next day, the doctors treating her posted this angry message online. accusing me of making a diagnosis without ever seeing the patient in person, of recommending surgery without a full clinical evaluation. I simply pointed out that a lot of things in neurosurgery can be done remotely. Sure, when it comes to making decisions about surgery, you often do need a full clinical evaluation. But in this case, the symptoms and complaints were described in enough detail and the MRI supported it. So I sent my opinion. It took me maybe half an hour. There were thousands of comments. Most people were on my side. They brought up telemedicine, remote diagnostics. By the end of the day, the original post was deleted. That experience really showed me the value of being active on social media. It's important to stay connected to the public. Then in 2018, I was included in the 100 New Faces of Kazakhstan. I knew that meant journalists would come knocking, that I'd have access to media and the chance to use it for free to educate people. That first year alone, I gave around 500 interviews. Whenever a journalist reached out, I tried not to say no. And most of those interviews were in Kazakh. Slowly, the Kazakh-speaking audience started to get to know me. You just mentioned that it's only recently that you realized you were building your personal brand. But back then, what motivated you?
I
was working at the National Center for Neurosurgery and later at the National Hospital of the Medical Center of the Presidential Administration of the Republic of Kazakhstan. I saw so many patients coming in when their conditions were already quite advanced. The issue was that a lot of people didn't know what medical treatments were available here in Kazakhstan. So they'd start searching the internet, and what they found were foreign resources. They had no idea we had some of those same treatments available right here at home. Sometimes people would come in after a late-night emergency, say at midnight, and after a CT scan, the family would immediately start looking online for a doctor to explain what was going on, what to expect next. And there were even times when people would say, "We're willing to charter a plane if you can come and perform the surgery." It's incredible how much the ability to communicate has changed. Of course, it does take a toll on my personal life. That's exactly what I was going to ask. When does Dr. Berdikhozhayev stop being just a doctor? And when does Mynzhylky Berdikhozhayev, the father, the husband, take over? If I'm completely occupied with something, not looking at my phone, then I guess I'm off duty. But if I get a chance to check my messages and someone needs help, I don't hesitate. So the line is kind of fluid. So a doctor never really stops being a doctor, does he?
Когда проблема касается тебя лично, или же касается твоего близкого родственника, можно потревожить кого угодно.
No, it's true. Because when it's your loved one who's sick, nothing else matters. In those moments, people will reach out to anyone who might help. And on social media, it's the same. Whenever there's a problem, people start tagging Akorda or the president himself. Compared to the head of state, a regular doctor is much more likely to be disturbed. Their personal life often takes a backseat, even if it's 2 or 3 a.m. There have been times when a patient has had a stroke, been rushed to the hospital, and at the same time their relatives start calling. I have to explain that the patient needs to get to the hospital first and get a CT scan. Once the scan is done, they can send me a video of the screen and I can assess how serious the situation is, whether surgery is needed. If it is, I can guide them to the right specialist at the hospital. Of course, sometimes the requests don't make much sense. And yes, there are times when I get really tired. I'm not immune to burnout, no one is, especially in our profession. My wife, who's a psychologist, always says, if you're not in the right frame of mind, just turn your phone off. We've talked about this a lot. There were moments when I've been a bit blunt with people, but these days I've worked on myself and I try to answer more calmly.
Прокачанный психологически, и стараюсь более в мягкой форме ответить.
You mentioned that the surgeries you perform in Almaty are streamed on your YouTube channel with English commentary. I assume that's to reach a wider audience. Exactly. So, is there something you can share with doctors in other countries? How did the idea come about? When did you realize it needed to become a regular thing, not just a one-off? I mean, you stream every week now.
Есть очень много моментов.
There were a lot of factors involved. One of the things that happened was when some people from the FOMS, Fund of Obligatory Medical Insurance, accused us of possibly misreporting. And there are sometimes accusations like that. At least that's my personal opinion. Maybe they're not accusations. They'd claim that we had stolen something. The tools we use are expensive, and considering the cost of the quotas, it was important to clear that up. So for me it was simple. I just send them a link to the surgery. I tell them, take a look at the video, see which tools we used, and the patient's diagnoses. And within 5 minutes the issue is resolved. We also have a direct digital feed from the angiographic monitor, and thanks to our partners we installed an expensive camera in the operating room. It helps us zoom in on our hands, shows how we prepare the instruments, what the surgery is about, and what movements need to be made. Everything's recorded and saved on YouTube. I get the FOMS angle, but how did you figure out that this could also benefit your colleagues? And what kind of feedback have you been getting?
В 2014 году первые лайв-операции пытались записать.
Well, in 2014 we first tried recording live surgeries. I was still at the 7th City Hospital in Almaty at the time. Then in 2016 we started hosting an annual conference called the Neuro Discussion Course. Just last September we had the 9th edition of the course. We also held the 4th edition of our Neurotech conference that same month. At every conference we perform demonstration surgeries. We do this at international conferences too. The younger doctors seemed really interested, so colleagues started reaching out. At first, when I was commenting on the surgeries, I did the first 20 to 30 in Russian. But then foreigners started asking, we didn't quite understand, could you do the next one in both languages? So I started doing the commentary in both Russian and English. Eventually I realized that if I just provide information in Russian, I'm not encouraging our doctors to learn English. They could always ask me later if they missed something, but I wanted to motivate them to get better at English. And that's how it all came about. So, do neurosurgeons need to know English nowadays? Honestly, I don't think you can get very far without it. Are there any neurosurgical procedures in Kazakhstan that we can truly be proud of, ones that are on par with what's done around the world? One of our recent achievements that we've successfully incorporated into routine practice is the implantation of stereo electrodes. The procedure involves making small openings in the skull, then inserting long needles into the brain tissue. These electrodes help pinpoint the source of the abnormal electrical activity that causes epileptic seizures. Many of our patients suffer from epilepsy that doesn't respond to medication. In these cases, we've had some excellent outcomes. For instance, one patient had tried 3 or 4 different medications without success, and despite that, the seizures were only getting worse. We were able to locate the part of the brain responsible for the seizures, and we treated it by burning the affected area. So you first locate the problem area. Exactly. We identify the area first, then burn it. This procedure was done just last year, and the patient was completely cured. Can you tell us about how this technique was adopted? How did it go from being a new technology to something that's now part of your regular practice? This approach has been around for a while. Parkinson's disease is treated in a similar way, where electrodes are implanted in the brain to record signals. It's a similar procedure, but with Parkinson's we usually use just 1 or 2 electrodes. However, in one of our cases we implanted 13 electrodes in a patient.